Hey guys, it's Justin again with another video. Today I'm going to be showing you how I painted my Kill Team Terrain, or how I'm going to be painting my Kill Team Terrain. This is very much a work in progress. So this is my test piece. This is the first piece that I painted. I kind of approached this with like a little bit of a speed painting approach, I guess. I can't use the same word twice, but you know what I mean. I wanted to speed paint this. I want to get this terrain to a pretty decent standard without spending a ton of time on it. I'd rather be painting models, but I do want a nice board of terrain to play the game with. So this is just one of the scrap piles that comes in the game. I think that it looks pretty good, and I didn't spend very long working on it, and I think that's kind of the big key here, is that you know, this didn't take me more than a couple of hours to get this effect, and I'm more than pleased with it. So I'm going to show you how I did it. So I'm not going to paint this exact piece because obviously this is already painted. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab one of the barricades from the set, and we're going to get started. So this is what we're going to work on today. Let me adjust my camera a teeny tiny bit. There we go. So this is one of the barricades. It's got a whole bunch of different elements in here. There's like a wrecked jet, there's the front grille to a vehicle, there's a tire, there's another one of these kind of sections off of a vehicle, there's some diamond plate, and then there's some girders, and then there's also, bonus, there's some lighting. On the back side you've got a lot of the same elements. You've got like a battery that's kind of generating these lights, and I think this will be a really good test piece to show you all the methods that I used and what you can do to kind of do this yourself. So as you can tell, I've already base coated this in brown. I used just a spray can for this, so any brown spray can will do, or you can do this by hand if you so choose, over whatever kind of primer you want. Darker color will probably give you a little bit more depth of shadow, whatever you want to go for. So the first thing I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to show you is some of the tools I'm going to be using for this. I'm not going too crazy with this. You should not need a ton of special tools. So the biggest thing you're going to need for this is going to be some of these brushes that I'm going to be using today. These are stippling brushes. I got these at Walmart. It's like 8 or 9 a pack for like $2. They're real big. They're kind of stiff. And obviously you couldn't paint anything incredibly detailed with these. But for this kind of application, these are the perfect brush to use. So we're going to do a lot of stippling, needless to say, if that wasn't obvious at this point. So we've got our barricade. The first thing I'm going to do is we're going to start with an orange. So we've got a brown base coat. This is going to be like a dark rust color. The next color we're going to use is an orange. And this is going to be our bright rust color. So I'm using Troll Slayer orange. You can use any kind of orange that you like. If you have Rise of Rust, that might work a little bit better in your favor. But any orange will do. You're going to cover most of it up anyway. This is just to kind of make anything that might stick out pop just a little bit more. We're going to do this over the whole piece because it does not matter at this point. This is one of the lazy stages. So you just want contrast here. You want to get this all over everything. You want to stipple this in, and you want to make sure that you're covering a lot of your base areas. So go ahead and get that in there. Don't be shy. Just don't cover the whole piece. You don't want an orange piece to start with. If it's a little heavy up here, that's fine. Just kind of press on, but don't base coat it essentially. You don't want the whole thing to be orange. If it reads a little bit as orange, that's fine. Okay, so here's where we're at. Again, you can tell this is kind of heavy. That's okay. We just want that contrast. So this is going to get toned down a lot over the process. It's going to retain a little bit of that orangey look, but I think with the Octarius matte that comes, with the game, I think that this was going to look fine on the matte. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our kind of silver detail. So for this, I would recommend like a flatter brush. So this is kind of a janky synthetic brush. It's very large, you can tell. And what we're going to do next is we're going to do a very heavy kind of silver dry brush. So for this, I'm using Runefang steel. I'm just getting a tiny bit on these bristles. Not too much. We're just going to work that in. And we're just going to do a heavy dry brush over the whole thing, even the parts that aren't metal. So just kind of take your time, come in, grab these edges, work in like a little circular motion, and just bring some silver into all this. Now, this is going to hit most of your edges. It's going to duck some of the recesses, so if you want some in the recesses, maybe grab a smaller brush or, you know, come in and do that as you want. You can also do a little bit of stippling. You know, just don't make it look too intentional. And then there's a big reason for all this, because this is going to be your last kind of really messy step. So you can, you know, going forward, accuracy is going to matter a little bit more, but not a ton more. Because again, this is orc terrain. This is not anything that needs to look too nice. So just make sure you get in there, you dry brush all these edges, and you get all these details. Pick everything out. Make sure everything gets a little silver. If you miss the tires, that's not a huge deal, because they're not really supposed to be silver anyway. We're going to be painting over all that later. So there you go. Just as quick as that. Now it's kind of got like a brassy look to it. So let me go clean my brush and we'll jump into the next step. Alright, so there's where we are. Show you the other side. I made another pass just to make sure everything looked the way I wanted it to. So there's pretty nice rusted out looking gate. Now what we need to do next is start incorporating some color into this. So I'm going to grab my Evil Sunz Scarlet, and we're going to grab kind of like a medium-sized brush. And then we're going to go back to stippling for a little bit. So make sure you get most of this paint off. Now how heavy you apply this is entirely up to you, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out some details that I want to be red. So the majority of this airplane here. And we're going to stipple that on. And one of my pieces of advice is to don't cover the whole piece. Just don't. Let some of that silver from those edges shine through. Let some of that rust that you applied in the beginning poke through. Build this up in some light layers. You know, build up that opacity and really let this kind of look like all these multiple complex colors. So I'm going to keep working around this, and then we'll come back. Okay, so with our next kind of large brush, we're going to grab this guy right here. This looks to me like one of those like energy panels that you see sitting outside of complexes and buildings and stuff like that. So I'm using Waflesh because it's kind of not a super saturated, but a very dark green. And we'll probably do like 2 layers on this. Depending on how opaque this goes down. But I just want to kind of give that look that like this was maybe like stolen. Now I try not to get too crazy with my colors here because I don't want a lot of really bright, vibrant colors. I want this to look nice and dark and gritty, and not like super saturated, even though orcs are very much that kind of loud, you know, that's them. So there's the green, nice and muted down, not too bad. Now I think I might at some point pop another layer over this that's a little bit brighter, but still kind of toned down a little bit, but we'll see what happens. So that's literally it for the green. If you want to make sure you grab a little bit on the top of the back there, you can use that to kind of help inform what you're doing later on. But there you go. Alright, so the last kind of color I'm going to use on this is going to be some Uriel yellow. I just want like maybe 1 or 2 little yellow panels. We're going to use kind of small brush. This is where, you know, even though we're stippling, we want a little bit of control because we don't want it to look super like painted on, or well, cleanly painted on. We want to keep this style. So let's start here. I'm going to grab this little flap here, paint that yellow. And then I think this bottom panel here will be fine in yellow as well. So just grab those, make sure that you get them the way you want them. Build that color up nice and slow, and that red's going to help kind of push that along a little bit. So use these colors to your advantage. And right now we're working with a lot of tones that would work well with yellow. So the whole piece should look kind of cohesive at the same time, even though we're not really looking for that. So there we go, something like that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do here, we've got everything kind of based out. We're going to start knocking things back just a little bit. So our biggest player here is going to be Reikland Flesh Shade. We're going to use this to kind of add that kind of warm, kind of rusty element to things. We're going to use a little bit of Agrax Earth Shade. Anywhere where 2 pieces are going to meet, or where there's like a hard panel line, we'll put some of that in there. And then with everything all wet, we'll just kind of dot in a little bit of Fuegan Orange just to kind of create that high rust point on things. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do this real quick. And we'll just kind of focus at one section at a time. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hit this airplane. And I'm using kind of a crappy brush here for this, so don't mind that too much. Use whatever brush you want to use. I'm just going to go ahead and base out this plane. And we're going to hit the whole thing with that Fuegan, or with the Reikland Flesh Shade. Like I said, this is going to give you that nice rusty tone you're looking for. Don't let it pool too much because you're still going to get that coffee staining. And the other thing is this: you want this to be quick. You don't want this to take forever to dry. So if you've got lots of heavy pooling, it's going to take way longer to dry and you're not going to be able to get this done. Unless you're painting all these at one time, you know, that might work out in your favor. But if that's not something you're looking for, or if you're you know, trying to just knock out one piece at a time or something like that, just put it down in thin layers, step back from it, take a look, make sure everything looks the way you want it to, and then come back to it. Now this kind of effect is really going to shine when you get to the girders and the diamond plate and all that stuff, because this is, you know, you're putting this over like basically raw silver, and that is going to look really nice on there. So again, make sure you get all those nooks and crannies, make sure you get everything. I didn't clean the nubs up on this too much. I want my models to shine. I don't really care as much about my terrain. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, I don't know. So there we go. Just make sure we get that in there nice and good. Get that on that wheel. Get into the bottom of this pot. There we go. So we'll call that good for right this second. So while that's still wet, we're going to clean our brush off real quick. We're going to jump over to the Agrax. Now this, I'm going to apply. I'm going to suck a little bit of that up. I don't want that to pool so heavy down at the bottom here. I want that rust effect, but I also want to be able to put this Agrax down in that spot. So now we've got our Agrax. We're going to grab this and we're going to put this, I'm going to start working around these details where, like I said, where things meet. You want to make sure that you put a heavy amount of that so it looks like a nice shadow, and it's going to create that border effect, and it's going to make it look like these are 2 separate things, not one giant molded chunk of plastic. Then we're just going to take a small amount and we're just going to drag it through the panel lines, and if you get a little bit everywhere else, it's fine. It kind of looks like soot or dirt build up because it's that dark brown. It's going to work in your favor. Just kind of touch these a little bit, grab a little bit up here, create some of that definition that we want. If there's any spots that you happen to notice, that's one of the beauties of this technique is like, if there's anything you notice that you missed, you can just drop another color into it and it's going to look fine. So just make sure you pick out all these details, make sure everything is highlighted. Despite the fact you're using a shade, you're still highlighting detail. So something like that. Not too bad looking. I think that's pretty crispy if I do say so myself. And then the last thing we're going to do, we're going to clean our brush off one last time. And while everything is still nice and wet, I'm going to grab this Fuegan Orange. If I can get it to stay open. Just grab a tiny bit, and we're just going to touch like metal areas. And what that's going to do is it's going to mix with the other washes, and it's going to soften as it dries. And it's just going to look like little spots of like really heavy rust. And it looks really cool when it's done. Again, on the back, we didn't do too much with the Agrax on the back, but you can see on this diamond plate, we're just going to grab that. That's a lot. I put a lot on there, but we can go back and adjust that if we need to. I think that's going to be cool though, because it's like a nice little corner. It doesn't look like there's too much like rain or anything that can get in there and mess that up. So you can be as realistic or as you know, I want lots of deep, heavy, contrasting colors as you want to be. Use your own rules for this. Don't follow any hard rules. You know, this isn't real. And there you go. So I'm going to go finish washing this up, and then I'll come back once it's all dry. Okay, so here's what we look like now that our washes and stuff have dried. For the most part, there's a couple little teeny tiny spots where things are kind of still a teeny bit wet, but it's not going to stop us. So now we're going to bust out, well, you should bust out some slightly nicer brushes. We're going to do a little bit of detail work. I'm going to keep using this crappy brush because I don't care too much. And we're gonna base coat a couple of like smaller elements, things that need to be a certain color and be blocked in. So I'm going to grab Mechanicus Standard Gray. I'm going to paint all these wires, and I'm going to paint the tires. If I can, there we go. Now, I would watch out for your metal effects, so just kind of be real nice and neat around some of these elements here. And then we're going to grab this wire that's coming from all the lights as well. And then take your time, make sure you get everything base coated out, and we'll come back. Okay, so now that we've base coated all these details, it's time to give them a wash. So I didn't realize how kind of middle ground gray Mechanicus Standard Gray was, so we're going to give this tire like maybe 2 washes of Nuln Oil just to bring it down nice and a good bit. I want this dark. And then we can jump into kind of finalizing what we've done here and wrapping this up. Alright, so now that we've fixed the tire, I also went ahead with that black wash, and I kind of put just filled out a couple of other areas around the model just to make sure that we had the right amount of contrast in those panels, just the deep panels. So now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of step back a little bit, and we're going to do what I call like air fixing. So we kind of took everything to like 11, so to speak. We brought it back down with a wash. And now, just to create just a little bit more visual interest in things, we're going to come back to our base coats. So more specifically, the Evil Sun Scarlet, the Wa Flesh, and the Uriel Yellow. And we're just going to grab just a really tiny brush for each of these. I'm going to use a separate brush for each one. And we're just going to create very, 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 very tiny areas of highlight for each of those colors, just so that it looks like there's a tiny bit of that maximum opacity, and you know, that paint is still there a little bit. So just little specks, little dots. I'm going to zoom this in so you can see it a little bit better. Hopefully, there we go. And you're just gonna create spots of that little bit of yellow, so it's still there, you know. And then you can do the same thing with the red, with the green, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about how we're gonna wrap this up. We're gonna tie this all together. We're kind of at the finish line. You could definitely leave it like this. I think this looks great. This is perfect for like a tabletop. I think it's got a lot of interest. It looks really cool. It looks worn down and beaten up. And it didn't take a whole lot of work. But we're gonna push it a little further. So I'll be right back. All right. So it's subtle, but it's there. We've gone ahead. We've reintroduced these colors, and we've brought some of that back. Now the last, what I would consider vital step, is we're gonna take a small kind of flat brush, and just like the first time we did it, we're just going to do a very light dry brush over all the metal stuff. You're going to try and avoid the tire, try to avoid the wire, and then like anything that you don't want to have any of this like silver. We're just going to do a very light pass over the reds, over the silvers, over the green, the yellow, all that stuff. You're not going to need a lot of this. And we're just going to, again, in tiny little circles, we're just going to very slowly incorporate that in. It's going to highlight all those edges again. It's going to kind of reintroduce that metal that we lost when we applied our washes. And it's going to kind of give you that next dimension of color. It's also going to make these diamond plate pieces look really good. Need a little bit more silver. I had less on my brush than I thought I did. There we go. So just a little bit over this diamond plate here, and it catches all those little pieces, and it looks really nice. It brings that edge out, and it just looks really cool. Now here on the back, again, we put that little bit of rust on this one, and hit that rim, hit these pillars, the inside of this, just, you know, work your way around it. And if you hit anything that you don't want to hit, just kind of go back a little bit, darken things up, use your previous colors. Now from here, the one thing I forgot to actually paint were these lights. So I'm going to base coat these in like a light gray, I think, and then maybe like just a drop of like a yellow or a tan to warm them up a little bit. We'll see. So let me go grab those paints and we'll see what I'm going to do. Alright, so we're going to start with a light base coat of Rackhearth Flesh mixed with just a drop of Uriel Yellow, just to make these look like either they were on or like they're off, maybe, I don't know. And then I think I'm going to highlight with like a cooler off-white. But I just want to grab the bulbs themselves, drop a base coat on them, and see what they look like once everything is dried up. This should give me a pretty nice base to work off of, nonetheless, rather than stepping from like a straight silver that where the orange and stuff still sits, and just bring that right back up. Alright, so I'll be back in just a minute and we'll figure out what we're going to do with the rest of these lights. Alright, so what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to go over these with an Ulthuan Gray. I think I like the tone of this a little bit better. I don't know if it's because it's going over this mix that I've made, or if I just like the ultra gray better, but that's what we're going to go with. So I'm going to skip that last step. I don't think that it's going to affect things too badly. Alright, so this is where you can call it done, I suppose. Now I'm going to do one extra thing, and that is just going to be something to tie everything all together. If you're looking at these two beside each other, if you're eagle-eyed, you might notice there's one little extra detail that doesn't quite match up between the two. And that's, I've used some pigments. So, I've got brown iron oxide from Vallejo and MIG's light rust. We're just gonna kind of loosely, very roughly slap these on. There's not really a lot of rhyme or reason to this. I'm going to start with the brown iron oxide, and we're going to work into the light rust. So we're going to put some paper down so that we don't mess up my working area, and we're going to just grab like an old brush and get into it. I'm going to use another one of these small guys. Now the big areas I want to focus on, the bottom, and I kind of want to use this almost as like a supplement to the Agrax Earthshade wash. So we're going to drop this down here on the bottoms of these pipes and stuff where rust would collect. And then we're also going to kind of hit the tires with it, because I feel like it makes the tires look like they've been sitting for a very long time out in the dirt, and they've been out in the sun, and the rust and stuff hanging out over top of them has cracked and broken away and gotten all over this tire. It just makes it look nice and dusty and dirty, and you know, I know we said we weren't going for realism, but it brings just a little bit of that into what we've got going on here. Now if you get little pockets of pigment just kind of hanging out, that's totally okay. I try to make sure that it's not super apparent if that happens, but if it does happen, it's not a big problem. So I'm just going to work this around. We're going to get this all tied up, and I'll let you know when we're done. And there we have it. I'm calling this done. It's nice, it's gritty, it's dirty, it's really beaten up. It looks cobbled together like it should. I went a little heavier on the pigment with this piece than this piece, so I might go back and add a little bit more to this one. But I don't think that either one of them looks bad. I like the way they both look. I think they look great. I think they're going to be really nice additions to my tabletop, and I think that painting them this way was a good call on my part. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully you learned a little something. Hopefully this is something you guys find helpful. I would love to do more stuff like this in the future, so if you guys enjoyed this type of content, please let me know. I've obviously grown more fond of painting miniatures here lately, so I'd like to continue doing it. So with that, I'm going to end this video. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you with the next one later.